Ever wonder what it took to become a Roman legion? It wasn't just about showing up with a shield. Their training was absolutely brutal, designed to forge the most disciplined fighting force the ancient world had ever seen. Forget the gym. These guys marched for 20 miles in under 5 hours, carrying over 60 pounds of gear. And that was just the warm-up. But before the training came the selection. Not just anyone could sign up. A recruit had to be a Roman citizen, at least 5'8" tall, in peak physical condition, and pass a rigorous inspection. They were looking for strong legs, broad shoulders, and a sharp gaze, the raw material of a killer. Once accepted, the recruit was stripped of his identity. He was now a number, a cog in the machine. The first and most crucial stage of his transformation was the march. Not a leisurely stroll, but a grueling, relentless ordeal. 3 times a month, legionaries undertook a full march of 20 Roman miles, to be completed in just 5 hours, loaded with over 60 pounds of gear. This included their armor, weapons, and a personal pack called a sassana, which held rations, tools, and a stake for the camp's palisade. This professionalization of the army was largely thanks to the Marian reforms of the late 2nd century BC. General Gaius Marius opened the legions to any Roman citizen, regardless of wealth or land ownership. In doing so, he created a standing army of career soldiers who served for a promised pension and a plot of land. Their loyalty shifted from the state to the generals who led them to victory and riches, a change that would have profound consequences for the Republic. Let's take a closer look at the tools of their trade. The legionaries' primary weapon was the gladius, a short, double-edged sword designed for stabbing in the tight confines of formation combat. It was a brutal, efficient killer. Their shield, the scutum, was a large, curved rectangle of wood and leather. It wasn't just for defense. Its weight and shape were used to punch and unbalance an opponent, creating an opening for the gladius. Their armor, the iconic Lyrica segmentata, consisted of overlapping iron plates, providing excellent protection while allowing for a surprising degree of flexibility. This gear made them a walking fortress. This wasn't just about physical endurance. It was a psychological tool. The constant fatigue, the aching muscles, the sheer monotony it was designed to break a man's individual will and forge a collective resilience. They learned to march until their feet bled, and then march further. But the weighted swords were just the beginning. Recruits spent hours practicing with the pilum, the legion's deadly throwing javelin. They learned to hurl it with a devastating accuracy, a skill that would often decide the first moments of a battle. A legionary's life wasn't just marching and fighting. It was a life of relentless, back-breaking labor. In peacetime, they were the Empire's construction crew, building the very roads they marched on, as well as bridges, aqueducts, and canals. This constant work kept them physically hardened and denied them the idleness that could lead to dissent. Their diet was as disciplined as their drills. The staple was grain wheat or barley ground into flour for porridge or hard bread. This was supplemented with whatever could be foraged: lentils, beans, and vegetables. Meat was a luxury, a reward for victory. Their standard drink was puska, a sour wine mixed with water, which was cheap, hydrating, and killed bacteria. It was fuel, not a feast. Then came formation training. The Legion was not a mob. It was a perfectly synchronized engine of destruction. Recruits drilled endlessly, learning to form the testu the tortus formation, an interlocking shield wall that made them impervious to arrows, and other complex maneuvers that allowed them to react instantly to any battlefield situation. Discipline was the bedrock of the Legion, and it was enforced with brutal efficiency by the centurions. These hardened veterans were the backbone of the army, and their primary tool of enforcement was Divitus, a vine staff that they used to beat any legionary who stepped out of line. Mercy was not a virtue. Within the Legion, there were specialists. The immunes were soldiers exempt from the harshest labor due to their specific skills. These included engineers, surveyors, blacksmiths, and medics, known as capsori. These medics were highly trained, capable of performing complex surgeries on the battlefield, and were a key reason for the Roman army's high survival rate. Then there were the standard bearers who carried the legion's eagle standard, the signifer, and the vector. These were positions of immense honor, and to lose a standard in battle was the ultimate disgrace. These men were expected to die rather than let the standard fall. But the legion's dominance wasn't confined to the open battlefield. They were masters of siege warfare, engineers of conquest. When an enemy city defied Rome, the legionaries transformed from soldiers into the most terrifying construction crew in history. Nowhere was this engineering prowess more evident than at the siege of Alesia in 52 BC, trapping the Gallic chief Vercingetorix and his massive army. Julius Caesar's legions performed one of the greatest feats in military history. They constructed 2 enormous lines of fortifications, a total of 25 miles of walls, ditches, and watchtowers. The inner wall, the circumvallation, was to keep Vercingetorix's forces penned in. The outer wall, the contravallation, was to defend against a massive Gallic relief army. Caesar's legions were now the ones under siege. What followed was a desperate, brutal battle. The Romans, outnumbered and attacked from both sides, held their ground. They fought on the walls they had built, repelling wave after wave of attacks. It was a testament to their discipline, their engineering, and their sheer bloody-mindedness. In the end, the Gallic relief army broke, and Vercingetorix was forced to surrender. Alesia was the ultimate demonstration of the legion's power. The ability to fight a battle and build a city at the same time. They would build massive siege towers that dwarfed city walls, giant ramps to breach fortifications, and an arsenal of deadly artillery. Ballistas, like giant crossbows, would unleash a storm of iron bolts, while onagers, massive catapults, hurled boulders to smash defenses. For a city under siege, the relentless, methodical work of the Legion was a death sentence, delivered one stone at a time. For more serious offenses, the punishments were terrifying. A sentry who fell asleep on duty could be stoned to death by his own comrades. And for cowardice or mutiny, there was the ultimate punishment: decimation. 1 in every 10 men in a cohort would be chosen by lot and beaten to death by the other 9. It was a chillingly effective way to ensure absolute obedience. But it wasn't all brutality. The Legion also forged an intense bond of brotherhood. The smallest unit was the Contubernium, a group of 8 men who shared a tent, ate together, and fought side by side. They became a family, and this loyalty was the glue that held the Legion together in the heat of battle. This combination of brutal training, iron discipline, and intense camaraderie created a soldier unlike any other. The Roman Legionnaire was a master of his craft, a hardened survivor, and a loyal brother, and he was the product of a system designed to create the most efficient killing machine the world had ever known. They practiced endless drills, swinging wooden swords that were twice as heavy as the real thing to build incredible strength and stamina. Victory on the battlefield was not just about survival, it was about profit. After the fighting ceased, the legionaries engaged in the systematic plunder of the defeated. They collected enemy weapons and armor, stripped valuables from the dead, and rounded up captives. These prisoners of war were a significant part of the spoils, sold into slavery to enrich the state, the generals, and the soldiers themselves. This brutal calculus of conquest was a powerful motivator. For a truly monumental victory, the Legion and its general were awarded the highest honor, a triumph. This was no mere parade. It was a sacred, glorious spectacle. The victorious general would ride through the streets of Rome in a chariot, his face painted red to emulate the god Jupiter. Before him would be paraded the captured treasures: gold, silver, and exotic artifacts from the conquered lands. Important captives, like defeated kings and chieftains, were marched in chains, a living testament to Rome's power. And behind the general marched his legions. No longer silent instruments of war, they were roaring, celebrating heroes. They would sing lewd and satirical songs about their general, a tradition meant to ward off envy and remind the commander of his mortality, even in his moment of ultimate glory. For the common soldier, the triumph was the culmination of everything: a justification for the years of brutal training, the bloody battles, and the endless march. It was a taste of immortality. After 25 years of brutal service, if a legionary survived, he was rewarded. He received a plot of land, often in a newly conquered territory, and a pension. This premia was a powerful incentive, turning soldiers into stakeholders in the empire's expansion. These veteran colonies helped to Romanize the frontiers, spreading Roman culture and loyalty. So, the next time you see a statue of a Roman soldier, look past the romanticized image. See the scars, the calloused hands, the haunted eyes of a man who survived a system designed to break him. The Roman Legionnaire was not born. He was forged in a crucible of sweat, blood, and iron. He was the brutal, brilliant weapon that conquered the world. But no weapon, however perfect, lasts forever. The decline of the Roman Empire in the 3rd and 4th centuries AD was mirrored by the decline of its legendary legions. The system that had created the world's greatest fighting force began to decay from within. Constant civil war saw legions turn on each other, slaughtering the very men who should have been their brothers. And the best soldiers of the empire were spent not on defending the frontiers, but on fighting for the ambitions of rival emperors. To fill the depleted ranks, emperors increasingly turned to non-Roman peoples, so-called barbarians, to man the armies. These veteran troops were often excellent warriors, but their loyalty was to their chieftains and their paymasters, not to the abstract idea of Rome. The rigorous, systematic training that had defined the classic legion was simplified or abandoned altogether. The iconic equipment, like the larica segmentata and the pilum, was gradually replaced by simpler, cheaper gear. The legion became heavier, less mobile, and more reliant on cavalry. The disciplined infantry that had conquered the world was slowly transformed into a garrison force, often tied to a single province. By the time of the final collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, the army was a shadow of its former self. The unstoppable machine had rusted away. The eagle had fallen. To the enemies of Rome, the legion was a force of nature, an unstoppable tide of red shields and glittering steel. Accounts from conquered peoples speak of the terrifying, uniform advance of the legion, the rhythmic tramp of their hobnailed sandals, and the chilling silence before the storm of Pila was unleashed. They were seen not as men, but as something more, and something less, the soulless instruments of Rome's will. This psychological impact was a weapon in itself. The fear of the legions often preceded them, causing cities to surrender without a fight. The knowledge that resistance meant annihilation was a powerful deterrent. The legion conquered not just with the sword, but with the terror their reputation inspired. They learned to build fortified camps every single night, turning defense into a reflex. This relentless preparation is why the Roman legions conquered a vast empire. They weren't just soldiers. They were living, breathing weapons, perfected through the toughest training imaginable. If you enjoyed this, hit that subscribe button for more history.